What is up, everyone? Welcome into Dim Planets Hour on Love and Science Network. I promise this is not going to be an hour. Also, my name is Gracie, and thank you for joining me. We are going to be talking astrology and history today, but not just any timeline. Why not go back all the way to the Bible, right? The least controversial book of all time. Everyone agrees on it. Not very much open to interpretation. Very cut and dry, right? Very thinly veiled sarcasm there, as the Bible is clearly one of the most controversial books of all time. And now I'm going to add a little bit more to it. What if I told you the Bible was a book of astrology? Isn't that exciting? Even down to the 7 days of creation. Those are the 7 days that we have now, and they're all represented by different planet energies. If you want to go back and look at all the different things that happen on those 7 days and look at the planets that correlate to them, very fascinating practice. But I am here not really to preach to you about religion or tell you that Jesus was here to save us all from things or preach really anything about the Christian message. I want to talk history, because history is the one thing that I think can really be the key to solving kind of the current state to why we are the way we are. If you don't know the past, how the hell are you going to understand the future and really have a grasp on your present? Knowing where you came from is an incredible gift. It's also, I guess, kind of a privilege these days. I don't know if a lot of people take the record keeping as seriously as they used to, but what I loved about the diving into the world of astrology found through the Bible was really all the history and the deep diving and symbology I got to jump into. So my relationship with religion has always been one that's ups and downs. I think like anyone that gets into astrology really is. And the Christian-based thing of fear, I don't really resonate with fear-based anything. And so growing up, having such a fear-based religion teaching me about Jesus didn't really feel right. I always kind of felt that, the Bible was missing that overarching love symbolism. Everything you need is all within, and everything that you need is all found through loving others and being loved in return. And that's kind of what the spiritual journey led me to when I found the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Gospels of Mary Magdalene and Book of Enoch, and a lot of missing pieces of the Bible left out of history. Because when you think of history of all of humankind, there's got to be some crazy stuff that happened, right? So kind of journeying through the astrology symbolisms and ties. The first one is really, really not obvious, but it's very tied to the masculine and feminine, the sun and the moon. The sun is representative of the masculine and the moon is representative of the feminine, which is very true in astrology as well. And the 12 disciples in the New Testament show up very, very strongly as the 12 zodiac signs. And so there's been a lot of connection with the Son of God representing as the actual sun, a lot of heliocentric thinking there. But with the Star of David symbolism, dating back to the ancient Judaism practices with the sun in the middle and all the different planets on the other points. That star also shows up in the Order of the Eastern Star, the female answer to the Freemason group. So all of those energies and all those interconnected beings are very interesting, simply because the Eastern Star is what Horus, the Egyptian god, and the son of two gods that came back and ended up dying and being resurrected. But all of those things connecting to the Eastern Star being I believe Venus is what keyed everyone into Horus's birth, whereas the Northern Star and the Star of Bethlehem was what keyed everybody into Jesus's birth. So while they have a lot of similarities, we're going to dive into that in a little bit. There's a lot of interesting, not ripoffs, but kind of, that the Bible has from ancient texts and texts that we have found throughout all of history. Mesopotamia, Babylonian, Assyrian astrologers, Chinese astrologers, Hindu, who created the actual 12 houses that the sun passes through, and the 12, I guess, personalities of the sun, which is incredible. it's very, very ancient in practice, and astrology has always been that way. So the Bible isn't where astrology is first found, but offers us a very detailed look at the creation of everything. And if you go back in time, the keepers of this esoteric knowledge were closely related to Jesus, because my favorite author when it comes to spiritual works and quantum healing and the journey of literally, you never have to leave your mind. It's an incredible, incredible journey already in your mind. And that is taught through Dolores Cannon, a hypnotherapist and also a pioneer of past lives hypnotherapy. So looking at this book, it's a personal account of one of her clients that regressed in past lives all the way back to the time where she was a teacher in the Essene community, one of the most mysterious and unknown communities that Jesus spent time in, according to the biblical timeline. The Essene community was very disciplined, and from what other people remember them as closed off and a little bit detached, they are actually the exact opposite, and they have been handed down a full solar model that tracked all the planets in the skies. And also this touches on the Star of Bethlehem actually being an astrological phenomenon, which leads us to the 7 BC timeline, where there's a Mars, Saturn, and Jupiter conjunction in Pisces, that what some people would think could be what they saw as the Star of Bethlehem, the triple conjunction in the sky, especially if it was from a time where the Virgo full moon had just happened. Each Pisces season, the full moon happens in the opposite sign of Virgo. So born of a virgin, which is representative through Virgo, and the moon of the feminine. So it could have been born under a Virgo full moon, or Jesus could have been born around that time where it's a huge illumination. The one problem with that is that if the moon is really, really bright, it's hard to see the other planets in the sky. So I think after the full moon in Virgo would have been around the time of Aries season, not necessarily December 25th. But through a lot of these different timelines and understandings that the Christmas story is not original to Christ, we can kind of understand where these things are all very familiar through the esoteric text and also other cultures, prominent through Krishna, through some people would even say Thor. That was the Norse version of Jesus, with his very arrogant behavior at first and very protective nature at the end. But there's a lot of parallels through time of a lot of gods and sons of gods that come back and that have these December 25th birthdays. Like Jesus is not the only one. So going into Horus was the child of Isis and Osiris, the Egyptian gods that were born to the gods that created the skies and stars and the earth. And there was only like 5 days in the Egyptian world where you could give birth to gods and goddesses. And it was the extra 5 days given at the end of the year. So that was the 360-degree wheel represents the 360 days plus 5, which is where the Egyptian 5 days to give birth to the gods and goddesses come at the very end of the year. So for us, the end of the year would have been December 26th to the 31st, which is that window of time that the gods and goddesses are born. But Horus was born on December 25th. The winter solstice time was traditionally known when the days got really short and there was a lot more darkness. December 21st, 22nd, 23rd, 24th timeframe is actually when the sun slows down in the sky and it lowers to the point where that's when the days become shorter and everything. And that's the winter solstice time that we're kind of familiar with. But that's also a very strong solar energy time frame where you can even feel almost stagnant, or if you actually waited for those kind of like ups and downs of your energetic flow during that time. That's why around Christmas we're so busy and the consumerism is so pushed, and it's just like this energetic kind of siphon happening, and not a lot of people are aware of that. So when the sun is kind of reborn and put back, it's December 25th, and that's when the sun re-energizes and starts rising again and creates that cycle all over again. Don't quote me on all of that because I'm not a scientist. I'm way more of an astrologer. But that is when we kind of see the parallels of Jesus and Horus breaking apart. There's no way Jesus was a Capricorn. We can just go ahead and say that. Scientists and Christians and astrologers all are under the understanding and agreement, for the most part, that there's a chance that Jesus could have been born as an Aries and also a Virgo. So there's other information in the description. And also, if you check out my extended version of the show, I talk about a little bit more of a breakdown of all that. But that was very interesting to me just because I thought it was interesting, the symbolism of Aries being the head and the crown almost, and the physical body being the embodiment of Virgo. So either way, the sacrifice was of the head or of the body, and that's very symbolic with Jesus. Through the astrology of the 12 disciples, they're also connected to the 12 tribes of Israel. So I think we've covered the masculine is the sun, the feminine is the moon. So I look at that mother-father figure, which Jesus and Mary were. Mary Magdalene were very much married, so I can see that being a very strong connection. But the zodiac had Aries was Peter, Taurus was Simon, Gemini was James, Cancer was Andrew, Leo was John, Virgo was Philip, Libra was Nathaniel, Scorpio was Thomas, Sagittarius was James, Capricorn was Matthew, Aquarius was Thaddeus, Pisces was Judas. So that's very interesting with the death represented with Judas. So with all that being said, there's so much information that you can dive into about how the book is the Bible, the book of astrology, is laid out. So that goes a lot more into my extended episode on my DEM Planets channel. But the big turning point for a lot of astrology and religion and kind of the connection between the two, obviously it's hard to know all this information. So please don't beat yourself up if you have, completely condemned astrology up into this point. I completely get it. Christianity, modern Christianity, and also parts of ancient Christianity teach us to be afraid of a lot of things. And so knowing that Jesus was an astrologer, that the charts that they read in the biblical times in the Essene community were charts of people and bringing them together. Matchmaking was a thing back then, because how else would you know what you're made of if you don't, attune to the heavens and see what you're all about? So when you see the decline of spirituality and paganism and the increase of the church, it's all due to the Council of Nicea. So Emperor Constantine in 325 decided that he was going to be the reigning authority on what people needed to read in the Bible and what they didn't. And so he removed a lot of esoteric knowledge and texts from the Bible. The book of Enoch we talked about has a bunch of giants and really kind of crazy symbolism, even talking about possible UFOs or UAPs as they like to be identified now. But it really, I think the Council of Nicea really separated the connection between man and nature and really tried to separate the all-knowing, all-internal, all-within type of energy. Jesus taught that love and God lived within all of us, and the connection to God was special and unique to all of us. And all you had to do was go within and pray and love and be loved in return. And that was all of Jesus's message. So the fact that we have all these laws and all these judgments and all these fear-based texts coming out of a very bare minimum golden truth type of energy, we're looking at the idea that the edited and picked over version of the Bible is probably not what was originally created. So I think we all knew that in general, since nobody that was alive when Jesus was born was actually writing the Bible. But we go into a lot more of that on, like I said, my extended version of this episode over on DEM Planets. It's the correlation of getting past the fact that astrology is a self-absorbed practice. In order to better oneself and to better the world around you, you got to start at step one. You have to know thyself. And to truly know thyself is a deep dive and an investment into getting to know your true sacred core. So, while a lot of people talk about the history of astrology being very, very separated from religion and the church and everything, there's a lot of proof through history that that was not the case. And there's a lot of proof through our current practice of astrology that we have a lot to learn from the past. So I really appreciate you joining me for this episode. If you're looking for the extended version and some more information, including my own a little bit more personal journey with a religion and astrology and some beliefs that are shared throughout the traditional religious community about astrology, check out my extended version of this show, and I'll see you guys next week.